There are obvious reasons we'd like to fight world hunger. Peter Singer offers one possible solution based on a consequentialist, utilitarian view of ethics. Singer's argument briefly goes, if there's a drowning baby directly in front of you and you could rescue that baby at little consequence to you, it would be morally right to rescue that baby. This action would have the consequence of maximizing utility. If this is the case, then you can avert something really bad from happening without sacrificing anything that is of comparable significance, then we must do it. This argument leads to a two-part conclusion by Singer. In the first part, Singer asserts that affluent people not contributing to aid agencies is immoral in the same way that your refusal not to save that baby is immoral. And the even stronger conclusion that your contribution to these agencies should only stop when you've reduced yourself to a level that it would harm you to give any more. Garret Cullity, in International Aid and the Scope of Kindness, offers another argument in support of Peter Singer. Cullity is prompted by several objections to Singer's argument. The first objection that Cullity presents is the anti-consequentialist objection. The anti-consequentialist complaint is that you cannot claim that it is morally best to rescue the baby. You cannot make a utility comparison about values from one person to another. The anti-consequentialists also claim that you cannot determine if an action is morally right or wrong by impersonal values based on the consequences of that action. The next objection that Cullity lists is the methodological objection. There is a question about Singer's appeal to intuition that this appeal to intuition does not produce a true universal principle that can be applied to normative behavior. The deeper question about method is, if this example of Singer's drowning baby is a true analog to the situation of starving people in the world. We have discussed a multitude of differences between a drowning baby directly in front of us that we can rescue at the cost of nothing other than a dirty pair of shoes and people that are starving in far-off East India. Cullity is probably most affected by the objections of the practical ethicist, of which he considers himself one. The practical ethicists derive their ethical values from normative social values. Ethical theories they feel won't actually change people's minds, or more importantly, it won't affect their behavior. Moral theories are based on non-practical principles. It is one thing to save a drowning baby that is right in front of you, but it is entirely another thing to feed people starving in Middle Africa. This criticism ties into the methodological objection. If Cullity were to take these standards to heart, a practical ethicist in the early 1800s in the South would have to say that slavery and racism were morally right values. Ethical theories that advocated fair treatment would have no practical chance to affect everyday behavior. Singer claims that reform in practical ethics can occur, but it has to be based on actual moral practice. In practice, people in the antebellum South already believed in the moral practice of kindness and justice. Kindness and justice were practical considerations that were already in play. Slavery and racism were institutions that were held in place by metaphysical and empirical arguments, which were eventually proven to be false. The people of that period valued kindness and justice. They would say that you should act towards others of European descent in a kind and just way. It certainly appeared to them that to enslave a person of European descent would be unkind and unjust. Once the artificial lines that created the division between people of African and people of European descent was erased, it became practical to act with kindness and justice towards people of African descent. It became a normative social value that enslaving anyone is exceptionally unjust and very unkind, in fact, morally wrong. Kindness and justice are practical moral considerations. It is just and kind to save a drowning baby as long as there are no countervailing considerations. It would be unkind and unjust to let the baby drown and die. The line that divides a baby that is drowning and dying right in front of you and a baby that is dying and starving in Africa does not really exist. Therefore, it is unkind and unjust to let a baby in Africa die of starvation. The morally right thing to do is to save the starving baby in Africa as long as there are no countervailing considerations, and what short of your own health and well-being could possibly be a countervailing consideration to saving a human life?